Welcome to the PRL here at Texas, with only 3 rounds left remaining in the championship. There's still a lot left in store, but certain things have started to wrap on up. Primary Newt so far ahead in the standings now. Not able to show up for this race, but in a dominant 208 points across the season. Meanwhile, followed up by Ivy, still in contention for that P number 2, who has returned to the series to end it off. With Pager also chasing down that gap to Ivy in the rounds where Ivy didn't commit to participate, bringing the standings even closer. Though, Sauber still the dominant force overall. Got Hayden and Dale in the cars instead of the drivers that they did earlier on in the season. So it's going to be a lot of a different look for them, but they are still at the top of those standings. While Williams is on a charge to try and overtake Ferrari, and it is a very close battle between the two, but it's not going to be anything but spectacular between the two. Pager and Ivy, the two main names, but Bexter also coming on in the Williams, just an extra asset to score points. And with a short grid at the moment, with some maybe joining us with a bit of a delay, there's a lot of expectations for every single one of these drivers to get some of their best results across the season. As we currently see Kayhan leading the way in the Haas, teamed up with James this week here at Texas, third to final round in the championship. He's going to be the first to put down a lap in the USA liveried Haas. As he rounds the back end of the circuit, he comes to the line to charge up the hill. That is making Costa such an iconic track and such a heavy braking zone. It's all about how he can nail it now, and whether he can shoot to the top. Going through turn number 1, then he goes towards the next set. The S's. So many tracks nowadays have a set of S's, but Cotas still stand as one of the trickiest and longest sets as it keeps on winding, even once you've got past it, as it seems like the conditions in the sky are getting worse, and even a little couple potential chances of rain do linger. Kayhan being the first out on track is ever so important in these colder conditions, as he rounds onto that back straight now. He puts his foot to the floor, opens up the DRS across the activation line with a clear track ahead of him, but no slipstream in sight. Charging down into the braking zone, turning in for the apex, going a little bit shallow on how wide he goes on the exit, but gets back over to keep it turned in. Gotta keep it planted, as you can see a couple raindrops here or there. But now this is a long left sweeper before the tyres start to really ache on this right-hander, and the tyre wear can really impact how much time you find. But as he gets toward the line, the rain is starting to pick up actively, and so being first is going to be a huge bane in Kayhan's efforts here today for his first lap in this qualifying session, and across the line is a 1:36.6. And it's going to be interesting to see what anyone else can answer with the track conditions getting even more treacherous out there as the rain starts to pick on up. Bexter does find a 7/10 improvement over that of Kayhan to shoot to number 1. Great start for the Williams as we ride with Demo, who's rounding through into the back on end. Dale into 1:38.7s, Fade into 1:39s, tied with James. Pager up into the 1:36.9s, but way off his teammate in these treacherous conditions, and you can see Demo struggling. He's going to shoot the P number 4 with 1:38.5, but the ability in the wet and the lack of practice can cause lots of issues for these drivers. And Krislav still on his lap, coming round onto the main straight. He's got a long way to go Ivy's yet to set a lap time as well, but the little bit of drizzle does seem to have settled off just a little bit. Track temperature not going to be ramping up for a long time though, even if the rain does dissipate, as James retires that 1:39. That's the best time he's going to set, and if it does dry up, that time is a hell of a risk of Ivy and Slav finding improvements over it. But you can see a little bit of tentativeness on the car still, as he's going around through these kinks. The rain is still showing on this final sector of the circuit, but on that earliest part, it's not quite as bad, but clearly, rounding into the final corners, the rain is still definitely here. And Slav finds a slide into the wall. And that might be his only chance of a clean, semi-dry lap. Gone to the wayside as this rain continues to pick on up. As it's now onto Ivy on the track as the only person yet to set a lap time, other than Slav, who we saw end up losing it in that back on end. He comes through again these kinks that just start to die out the tyres, but he started on intermediate, so this lap time is going to be a bit of a struggle, but he will have the grip in this wetter part of the circuit. But with the likes of Baxter and Kaya getting in early laps, they might find huge advantage over what Ivy can get. But we've seen him have some connection issues and loading time issues before. This might have haunted his qualifying session at the moment, but it's across the line, and it's going to be jumping into a lowly P number 9 on a 1:42. It's going to be so difficult to find any kind of improvements in these conditions, as Dale retires from the session with his 1:38.7. This might be a very quickly wrapped up session here, as the track conditions continue to get worse. As we see Ivy slinging through the S's as the only one on track. It is Baxter shooting to the top with an amazing 1:35.9 in these conditions. Kyan first across the line with that 1:36. Benjamin with 1:36.9 as well, quite late on. And both Williams in the top two, giving huge chances to absolutely pull away from Ferrari in the constructors' standings. But we all know what Ivy can do. Second place in the championship for the whole time until they took a bit of a break. For very good reason. One of our better drivers in this league. Back here with us now. But it's going to be a lot of work to make an improvement from this current P number 9. As we see F1 Jordy joining with that McLaren. Still, sole seat in that McLaren. Same with Slav in the Alpine Fade and the Racing Bulls, and Demo in the Mercedes. Only Williams and Haas have two drivers here today at Texas. But still going to be a potential for the drivers to find an improvement. It's going to be very, very difficult, especially for people like Kyan. But if the race does go wet, potential to get some practice laps on the intermediate tyres in this session. As we see a couple of drivers like Fade and Kyan, F1 Jordy and Slav also come out of the pit lane. Still opportunities to fight for those outer points, but the top few positions potentially locked up due to these track conditions. As we do see Kyan rounding the back end, goes horribly wide. But still, it's before the line. He's still going to have a chance to set a clean opportunity lap here on the intermediates. As he does get underway, deploying that ERS potentially a lot easier to recoup that lost energy, because you have to brake heavier. But you don't want to be locking up the tyres, especially if you do have to brake heavier. So you see Kyan struggle up the hill in these wet conditions. Grip lost, and the pressure under the car getting quite heavy onto the ground effects. You also did lose quite a bit of grip on the ground effects as well, and the slide with that lack of grip when the water gets underneath the Venturi tunnels that provide that grip that these cars rely on so heavily just completely dissipates, which leaves lacking amount of grip and a struggle for Kyan as he rounds into the back end of Sector 1 onto that main straight now. Still gonna be so treacherous in these intermediate conditions to stay on the track. If you see him, he does go quite all over the place here. It's gonna be to the heavy braking zone, sliding in these conditions, locking up the rears as well, making it even more difficult to get the car turned in, as the car just feels so stiff and unenergetic, but the car isn't doing exactly what you want. As you can see, him overslide causes him to have huge amounts of issues, and you can see why these drivers might want to be getting the practice. As we hop over to Dale, who's also just hugging this inside line, potentially gonna be braking way before the 150 meter board, sliding into the corner with his own track invalidation, trying to get in this practice. He sits in P number 6 at the moment, but as he rounds through, he keeps on sliding. He does push quite well and finds a bit of grip on the outer side line, but on acceleration, he just slides away from him as we ride on board with Fade, who chucks it in, but manages to catch it on the absolute slide. Leaves the ERS on as he rounds that final corner really slowly, and it's a lack of grip as well for Fade trying to find some lap time, as Ivy will be one of the few drivers who can actually potentially improve their lap time, but down massively on this particular lap as revving the hell out of the car, sliding all over the place with the high revs. Potential frustration as well with that lap time, as you see Slav only in the 147s and a 150 for F1 Jordi, as the track ramps up in dampness. Still, some practice for these drivers, while Ivy is giving us a bit of a drift affair on his lap, sliding it through these corners. Quite impressive car control nonetheless. Slav has put in his lap time, but he's rounding the final corner with an improvement by a couple attempts, but it's nothing compared to the margin of 4.5 seconds to Ivy. So he sits stuck in P11 for the moment, as F1 Jordi already lost a lot of time on his lap. And Demo trying to find some kind of comfortability in these conditions as well, but obviously not able to match that 1:38.5 pace that he set. 5 minutes left in this session, and a few drivers just sitting and waiting in the pit lane as Demo comes into the pit, which leaves only 3 drivers left, as you do see that of Slav going off of track. Hayden Headley directly behind his teammate would love to make a good performance as the stepping drivers for Sauber, but you can see how hard these conditions do get in the hands of these drivers. But just lapping here now is Hayden Headley in P number 6. Don't really see much of this guy, so there's not a lot of data on how he's going to perform, but that just means that he could potentially show up and show out and give us a good result here. But in the end of the day, it's going to be a huge opportunity for Williams, as we've said previously. But also Fade is in that P number 5. Bexa's P number 7 in the championship, potentially P number 6 with the lack of updating standings. Jordi gets disqualified by going the wrong way from this session, which means we do see Pager come out for a little bit of practice on the intermediate conditions. Though Hayden is still on this back straight, as we see a lot of hugging on this inside line, trying to shorten out this track as much as possible. It's not a lot of room here at Texas to find large margins of improvement, but Pager, one of the few drivers we do expect to see pretty good pace from, but in this intermediate conditions, stiff control of the car just like the rest. as we do have a couple of drivers who have previous standing results in this sessions. Obviously, Chris Lav, who was P11 going into Silverstone, but the standings not updated, so and unable to give you an updated register on those. Demo P15 going into Silverstone as well. But does join us in that Red Bull, has had a couple outings, has P10 points, and has at least 10 points prior to Silverstone, as we see a few more retirements wrapping up this session. So far, 12 drivers to go into the main race, so 10 positions up for points. The rest gonna be a scrap for that P number 10. Unless we see any retirements, 50% race is what we see in this series here at the PRL. As this last 2 minutes winds on down. After this race in the calendar, you have a trip to Las Vegas, and we round it out with the legendary and iconic track that is Brazil. Track rumored to be replaced on the calendar, potentially in the near future, but not quite going to be replaced as of yet, as these drivers at this point just want the session to be over so we can get on with the racing. Intermediate conditions, very hard to drive in these cars, especially as I said with those ground effects. Pager unable to retire that previous slam into the rule. Cayenne potentially going to be the last to retire in this session, as Demo sat in the pit lane, not retiring at the moment to end this session any sooner. You do see Cayenne suddenly jolt across the track and retire after passing the line. We do hope to say none of this jolting though, as it can be quite erratic once we get into the race and dangerous. But as qualifying does come to a close of terms of cars are on track, Bexter is your pole position leader in the Williams with his teammate in P3. P2 is Cayenne, first out on track and able to get some clear air. But Jordi joining late into the session, able to set some times. Ivy and Slav late out onto the circuit is P number 9 and 10. The rest of the drivers are Demo P4, Dale P5, Hayden P6, Fade P7, James P8, and Ivy P number 9. Eyes will most definitely be on if Ivy can charge through the field, especially if it's in dry conditions, while Pager and Bexter hope to put out a good performance for Williams and secure themselves in P number 2 with a huge opportunity here, starting at the front of the grid together. But one last time, Bexter is that on pole position, as we'll just have a momentary break before we get into the race. As we are back for the race, the lights tick on. All 5 appear as the hold goes down for the final time with 3 races left in the calendar. It's a good start by Bexter, but it's 4 wide a little bit in the background. Pedro running around the outside by Cayenne, getting run slightly wide as both Salbers trying to make something work, but Demo slipping around the outside, trying to get on by, but gets tucked on in behind as Fade tries to make a move, still stuck in P7. Ivy already up into P number 8 as James drops down to P number 10, but it's both Williams leading us away at the start. Pager and Bexter leading away as Kion picks up a 3-second penalty already for crossing track limits, as it's 3 wide behind as a slow Dale goes on through. He turns on in onto the Mercedes. Fade gets pushed out wide. Ivy's trying to make up for the scrap in the middle, but the Haas coming out with damage as well of James as Fade drops all the way to the back of the grid with some damage of his own picked up, and Ivy's up to P number 7 as it drops down to P number 8 as the Rebel sends it on the inside of him and Demo, but under traction Demo gets back under through, and Ivy is able to switch it on back as well to get back past Butter and back into P number 7. As the possible race strategies here today, looking at a one-stop medium to hards, pick around lap 12 to 14, but safety cars can definitely change up how this occurs. You see Dale slipping off at the back of the tail end of the field, and Geordie trying to find some kind of rhythm. But Pager already closing down onto his teammate in P number 1. 5 attempts as the gap by the end of the lap after he makes the overtake, but Fade now trying to get past that of James, but he does end up into the pits. So it's a free position for him and the likes behind as he needs to come in and change his front wing. But Bexter leading the way then through into the S's. Difficult to follow in the dirty air and the wake of the cars behind as Butter picks up a 3-second multiple warnings penalty as well. Bexter finds some decent grip, but Pager drags him in just a little bit as we head towards the straights. ERS deployment going to be crucial for the drivers and management here today. Pretty much everyone starting on the mediums, and it's going to be a bad run out of the corner from Hayden Henley, but he was massively closed up to the back of Cayenne, going into the braking zone, but the exit isn't there. As Ivy, though, is getting a good exit, and with the DRS wide open on Demo, he swims on by. Fade trying to make a move on Butter, but Butter's going to brake late again, force him to the edge of the track, but Fade's going to pick up the throttle. Ivy's going to end up drifting back in ghost mode, back behind Demo, as Geordie picks up his 3-second penalty, and Fade does keep into P number 8 ahead of Butter, and his charge down the inside. Demo holding up the drivers on Fade and Ivy a little bit in this race at the moment. 2 of our regular contenders for solid results stuck behind, losing time to that of the leaders, and Ivy will be wishing to charge down Bexter and Pager as damage on the front wing of Demo sent him to the pit lane. But it's Ivy now actually having to play a bit of defense, even though he has DRS, as the slipstream comes through from Fade. He might send it down, but just opts in for the fake to try and play the mind games. He's going to wish to stick with Ivy if Ivy definitely has the pace here today to try and score some good results. Chris Slav is ahead by 2 seconds. So it's going to be a bit of a charge down before Ivy can look further forward in the grid. But Bex and Page are just putting in a solid performance, pulling away now from Kaya by 2.5 seconds. And the exact type of job they need to do to pull away from the Ferrari. F1 Geordie picks up a 3-second multiple warnings penalties of his own, leaving a lot to be desired here. And a lot of penalties already picked up. Ivy puts in a good first sector, pulls out of a danger zone of Fade, who keeps up with that DRS though, as in the second sector, not a lot of time can be made without slipstream or DRS. It's all going to be down to this third sector. Can they pull that final 10th or so gap to Krislav, which has been cut down already by 9 attempts before we get around to that main straight? As you go through this heavy right-hander, he slips in that 1 second, and Slav keeps falling off of the back of Hayden Headley in P number 4, and that gap keeps on growing. Hayden, again with the poor exit, was in 4 attempts coming through, but on that exit grows to 8 attempts and not able to put any kind of pressure onto Kayan as Pager makes a move onto his own teammate to swing out into number 1 before the S's, which is going to give a huge heap of dirty air to Bex, but he keeps on quite well. But by the time he gets to this point, the tires do start to warm up quite a bit, and it becomes a little bit more difficult as Demo, having issues of his own, back into the pit lane again for the second time this race. Pager's going to have to be defensive of his teammate then, coming onto the main straight. 3/10 is the gap as the DRS opens on up. It's going to be a huge run of momentum for Baxter, and it might just be an opportunity to slingshot each other through to try and keep pulling away, as Hayden, way better on the back this time, is going to send it down the inside, as Ivy's also on the inside of Krislav, which is made to look easy, but a little bit of a fight back. Well, Hayden is forced around the outside, as he is still holding on. He's going to have the inside line, so he's going to be able to keep the track, but the switchback might open up, but not enough grip in that Haas allows Hayden to sail into P number 4, as F1 Geordie picks up a second set of 3-second penalties. Ivy cutting the gap down to 1.3 seconds while these two battle out, and the gap grows to 3 for the drivers ahead. And it's the horror for Demo. Gets compounded by another 3-second penalty. It's Fade now trying to make a move onto Slav, who also has the DRS still off of Ivy. But on the outside, he does get onto the braking zones, and the soft tyres on Slav are now starting to massively die off, which gives Fade the opportunity around the outside to hang it, but the corner sweeps away from him, which keeps Krislav ahead for the moment. As through the S's, Slav tries to find as much grip as he can, but is already aching in terms of grip. And as you can see in front, Ivy's already on the back side of that Haas, but Fade's on this exit might have enough grip to get into the slipstream, and might even look for it now. Early defensive move from Slav's going to make it a tighter line, as you see Fade catch so much up in the braking zone. He is going to have an easy time catching up this time around, as Ivy, even with the DRS, just sails on by Kayan, and Fade already in front of Slav, who's going to try and fight back around the outside, but isn't going to have the grip in the tyres on lap number 5. So that's Fade back into P number 6. Bexton now, the one who finds a penalty of his own. Huge issues with track limits here at Kota, and he's got himself a 3-second penalty. Still on the back end of Pager, as we do see them slingshotting each other and swatching again. But Ivy is already charging them down. They've got a 3.7 margin behind to Hayden, but Ivy has caught the gap up already, and the DRS is wide open, heading for the uphill braking zone. He's going to be able to brake really late here, send it down the inside, nose is in, but he's going to have to give up a little bit, makes contact on the back end. It's not going to be the fairest racing you've seen, as he does get pushed back off track, with equally rough racing coming out from Hayden to punish the aggressive turn of Ivy. It's Fade trying to cut down that 1-second margin now to Kayan to try and make his charge to catch back up with Ivy. As we round the back end of sector number into the back half of sector number 2 with this huge straight. Again, Baxter slingshotting in front of Pager. It's giving them quite a bit of lap time on that last straight, and now it's Pager's turn to slingshot back in front. Gap is up to 5 seconds to Hayden Henley, as after those tangle with Ivy, as he keeps it on the inside, trying to hold up and try and make a bit of work himself. But he's got to be careful of Kayan trying to make his way through in these defensive maneuvers. Huge gap off the back of Krislav to F1 Geordie in a difficult race for those from P8 downwards. But a tactical game from the Williams drivers then of slingshotting to pull away from the Ferrari of Ivy, the lone standing car. It's going to be important for these drivers not to tangle with each other today to make the best result for Williams. But Baxter not able to get close enough to Pager to slingshot on the start-finish straight. It's probably going to be back around to the back straight for them to do a slingshot again. But Ivy's already found a couple attempts margin and brought it down to a 4-second gap rather than the nearly encroaching 5. Fade stuck in a bit of a DRS train then behind that of Ivy with his 3-second penalty as well. Hayden able to keep his nose clean and his penalty feed clean. Might be a boon in his race. Fade's got a lot of pace in that racing boost. But if you pick up too many penalties, it will make this race a lot harder to find out where you're meant to finish. But in the slipstream and the DRS, open on the back of Cayenne. But slipstream, hard to find any kind of advantages. But it's going to be close enough to send a move round in down at the inside line. And it's going to be done before the corner and sealed off and sent into P number 5. Loses a bit of time to Hayden, but who falls out of the DRS range of Ivy this lap. But Fade making another move into P number 5. So you do see Baxter did end up slingshotting back past Pager as Dale makes a move on the inside of Geordie and makes his stick in an effortless overtake. Geordie struggling for just any kind of pace and any kind of consistency to stay on track. But next to be catching Geordie in P number 10. We've now dropped below 4 seconds the gap to Ivy now. Pedro and Baxter really trying to find some kind of pace advantage through the slingshotting. But right now it might be better to try and just see if one of them can run away with the lead in the effort to fend off Ivy. Otherwise they're going to have to be playing DRS games with Ivy for the rest of this race. But Fade is on that back end cleanly now on Hayden Headley. But it's a 2.5 second gap up to Ivy down the road. The one he really wants to be keeping pace with in this race. So you see a yellow flag coming out from Chris Slav as he gets a little bit of a moment. But Fade now opening up that DRS down this back straight at Texas. This again might be quite an easy move. Defensive move from Hayden Henley. But it's already cleanly in the inside. Opportune line is seized for himself and Hendon doesn't fight it anywhere near as roughly as he does with Ivy. And Fade is up into P number 4. 1 away from a podium result here today. 8 laps down so far. As Hayden goes for a crazy move and Fade finds himself sliding and losing out to Cayenne as well. As it was going so good for him. He ends up having a devastating slip back, but keeps on the inside line, but is forced tightly into the corner and isn't able to make the move on the inside of Cayenne. As Baxter going to be overtaken by Page around the outside of the slipstream, but another 5 attempts has been found by Ivy again, and he just keeps on catching these two Williams at the front of this race. As Fade tries to make a move, but it's going to have to be delayed just a little bit. As he comes into the S's, he's going to get stuck behind Cayenne again. Through these S's, F1 Geordie picking up another penalty as we see Slav come into the pit lane. But trying to make it move early, gets forced wide with a bit of wheel-to-wheel contact. But finds the grip, sends it down the inside. And Fade back into P number 5, making up for the mistake and the slide. But still, a long way to go in this race for him. He's got to make it a bit more clean and careful. Has a penalty to his name. And it's still, it's an endurance, not a sprint for these drivers. Definitely racing as if it is a sprint in their minds. Baxter slingshotting back past Pager again. On that back straight. 2.2 seconds the margin now to Ivy. Going to be onto Ivy to try and keep glowing this gap. These tyres are going to start fading away soon. Lap 12 to lap 18 is that pit window that we did see highlighted. As Fade able to defend off Cayenne's re-aggressive charge in that DRS and is now borderline pulling that 1 second gap. As Pedro gets a mild exit. Not enough to try and slingshot past. As Hayden Henley retires from the race into the wall on the final corner of the track on lap number 10. And that's going to bring us to yellow flag conditions. And the drivers are going to have to slow on up as the safety car is brought on out, and that gap to Ivy is completely neutralized. As we see Butter into the pit lane, Dale into the pit lane, everyone who's going to be out on track and not round to the pits yet are going to be diving into the pit lane for a free pit stop here. A Slav, unfortunate to have pit on the lap prior, might find himself tumbling a few positions on the grid, but still in front of Buddha at the moment in P number 6. Gonna be a little bit of a slow period in this race as we catch round to the safety car again. Slav's gonna be let on through and the rest gonna be let on through as well, as the safety car waits at the entry of the S's to pick them on up. Pager setting a way slower pace under these yellow intervals, and Ivy's going to have no answer to it. He's going to have to let Pager back him up under these yellows as they want to get the free pit stop for both of the Williams double stacked without issue. 4 seconds, a decently safe margin, but still potential for errors on the double stack even so, as Geordie gets a speeding on the safety car drive-through penalty, one of the harshest you can get, as he's got to be careful as he might be nearing disqualification. Rounding through, 7 seconds is the gap that Pager has brought himself, with Ivy backed up behind him. It's going to guarantee Bexter into P number 1 back out onto this race. But will it be Ivy able to jump Pager in the pit lane with the Ferrari pit crew versus Williams? It will be interesting to see. But the turning, you gotta nail it in. Nail it out. Quick stop for the Ferrari. Back out in front of Fade. But will it be in front of Pager as well, who will have a slightly slower stop? And it will be. Ferrari undercut Pager even with the 7 second gap. Williams still perform a slower pit stop on that second and give IVP number 2 on track, which is going to make a huge difference to how Williams try and defend the rest of this race. As we catch up to the safety car, the order as it stands: Bexter P number 1, Ivy P number 2, Pager P number 3, lower in the standings, and the one who wants to be in the position to beat out Ivy in this race for the not just the constructors but for his own championship standings. So potential team games in the later stages of this race to favour that of Pager's own odds. Fade now in P number 4 with fresh tyres, and a fresh opportunity to get on the back of these Williams and make their day get a little bit worse, as he has had the pace over these 2 Williams so far in this race. Just stuck behind traffic, picking up a penalty and not having the cleanest of races so far. Bit of a reset here at lap number 11 as Hayden leaves and DNFs from this race. 10 points paying positions and 11 left in this race. Demo gets to reset himself, even though he does have those penalties to his name. And James, also with a desperate reset in P number 10. No penalty to his name or Dale's, gifted an opportunity to drive back into this race so far. Slav also not picking up any penalties, but we did see in that first stint a bit of a tyre wear issue, one of the first pits, which might be a bit of a boon with how early the safety car was into this race. Kind of forcing a mandatory long one stop with when it came on out. Not into the pit lane this lap around. So we're going to go round for another lap. It's going to bring us on to lap number 12. Leaving us with 16 laps potentially of green flag action here at the PRL, as Demo and James catching up to the safety car queue before we get underway. But what a move so far from Ivy. Up into the podiums, up into P number 2 in this race already, with Pager already behind him for the constructor standings. one more set in front of him, and the pace was there in that previous stint. Now he's got to ignite those hard tyres and get past Baxter. He's going to be defending his heart out, not just for the constructors, but also for those potential drivers' championship points, especially for that of Pedro, who wants to try and beat Ivy in this championship. Furthermore though, Fade is looking to create himself a nice little opportunity here. So far the pace is on his side compared to that of the two Williams drivers, and he will be looking to score himself on the podium, if not a P number 2. It's clear that he might not have the pace to match Ivy, but an opportunity to get P number 2 and gain a couple points on that of Pager and close up his championship odds to drive into P number 3 in the standings. But with a lockup like that under the safety car, that's going to make it a little bit more difficult. But Demo will catch up to the safety car then before the end of the lap, which will call in that safety car and let us go green, heading on to lap number 13. As we slow on up and wait for the safety car to pull on ahead. Tyres going to be cold for all of these drivers and a risk of slipping always in the game, but you can see the wiggle to desperately get some more tyre energy and heat into the tyres. You don't wish to overheat them, but you definitely do need as much grip as you can, especially on this restart in the favour of Baxter. He chooses when we go. He's going to leave it to the final 2 corners, but he chooses to start going before the final corner, try and pull a little bit of a gap. But Ivy stays with him. No DRS this time around, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to make the move. But a decent exit for Ivy, already within 3/10 the margin. Slipstream going to be picked on up as well. But it's not going to be close enough on this lap to make anything work on the first corner. But clean, and everyone staying in the same positions at the moment. Ivy now going through the S's, trying to claw that gap, but Page is sticking with him. If not sticking with him, better. 3/10 down, and he has got those tyres ignited and underway already. He's going to be pressuring Ivy as much as he can to try and deny Ivy from looking forward and make him have to pay attention to his rear view mirrors. But to the braking zone, Ivy catches Pager out and gains a huge advantage, and it's now Fade catching up to that of Pager. But further behind, Dale trying to make something move onto Geordie, who gets another 3-second penalty to his name. And he gets into the slipstream. Geordie has none of his own. Down the inside. But a late braking move from Geordie does come on out, keeping his position for now, but losing a lot of track time as Dale sends on the inside and spins, making contact with the rear right of Geordie in a desperation lunge that wasn't on before he even sent it. Baxter able to find himself 7/10 the margin, and Pager within 2/10 closer to that of Ivy. So as the DRS doesn't open on this straight, but will be back on open across that sector 2 back straight, it's going to be down to their performance in the S's to see who's going to be challenging who. But the 4 front runners now lead us away in front of Cayenne and P number 5 with a 1.8 second gap already, which is going to make it a good opportunity for Slav to try and make his way on forward. But Fade compounds his first penalty by picking up a second. 6 seconds to his name now. So we'll have to finish 3 seconds ahead of Baxter and 6 ahead of Ivy or Pager to secure his position on track. But it's going to be Ivy with the only one with DRS on the driver, who doesn't have any DRS in response, and is already going to fake down the inside, but isn't able to get the run this lap, as Baxter, deploying that ERS, does keep hold of P number 1 for now. Demo quite close to the back of Dale, quite close to the back of James, whilst Dale slips down to P10 with that spin that he had contact with Geordie with, potentially giving a slight puncture to as well, as we did see him come into the pits and lose 12 seconds on the back of the grid. Pager got a decent run, but Fade got an even better run out of that final corner. But with the DRS on the car in front, not able to make any kind of move, stick up the hill. Gotta wait for that back straight to make anything kind of work, because the straight just isn't long enough on the pit straight. Ivy finding a lot of time through the S's this time around. Down to 2 tenths at one point, but drifts out slightly as he comes through the back end of the S's and rounds off sector number 1 with a decent gap as he comes through. 4 tenths is the margin. That's definitely a workable margin. He does find himself sliding, which is going to make his exit a little bit work, as we're going to have to pay attention to Fade on the back of Pager as well. Both will have DRS, but Fade is so close to the back of him that maybe with this slipstream he can make something work. But in the end, this game doesn't give him enough top line speed to catch onto the back of Pager and make something work, as Kyan does make his move back onto Slav to defend P number 5. You see Demo and Dale switching about as Dale has caught back up onto the back end of Demo. As he is trying to make a relatively good performance here in the Sauber, as Hayden Henley has already retired. He's the last left in the car. Slav, one of the only drivers who had a clean record, now picking up his set of penalties, leaving Ivy, Pager, James and Dale as the only ones without a 3-second penalty at the moment. But critically against Dale and James, as they are both 1 of 3 seconds adrift from that of Budda and anyone else ahead. So it's going to be a lot of effort to still catch that gap up, as James makes a mistake and gets Demo down his inside, now around the outside, but still defends it off with grit and grind, trying to keep a hold of points paying positions. But with Geordie 16 seconds back, he still will be within the points just by surviving now. But Dale and Demo want his P number 8, which he also wants to defend. Ivy, again, not able to get huge traction onto this back straight, which is going to leave Bexter with the chance to defend himself. And so, it's Slav in P number 6, the next to try and make a move, also unable to find anything, which sends us to these back 3. Demo switches from the outside to the inside, Dale from the outside to the inside, and he goes ghosted as Demo makes contact and they both bump into each other. But it's Demo sleeping on through and giving Dale room to get onto the outside, as he's going to outbrake James. But James is going to keep it on the inside. But it's on the acceleration that you see Dale come out on top and sliver his way through as well. He's now going to go hunting down the back of Demo round this track on lap 17 onto now that they go. A bad exit from Demo is going to give an opportunity to Dale, opening up that DRS, and is going to sail on by into P number 8 as Ivy picks up a penalty, and down the inside James goes and tags his front wing as he goes ghosted. Desperation lunge from that of the Haas, as he doesn't want to see these positions fly away from him out in front. Pager, super happy with this situation right now. Ivy picks himself up a 3-second penalty while trying to make something work on Bexter. Ivy now has to overtake Bexter and to get this position rather than just sit behind. And that's potentially going to make him more aggressive. Already making a move on the outside, round the end of Bexter. But he keeps his nose in, but he gets tagged. Doesn't spin. Keeps his car on track. But that's definitely going to be some kind of angering moment for him, as Ivy does cause a collision trying to make that overtake rather than having a clean swing on by. But Pager behind, it might be better to let him on through now, but especially if they pick up any kind of damage to try and hunt down Ivy, who has clear air to try and grow that 3-second gap, and he has at least 10 laps to do so. But Fade, on the back of Pager, not able to make anything kind of work, as the DRS train might be able to keep Baxter and Pager in play. While we was focused on the leaders, we did see James get past Demo, who's back into P number 10, and Dale has been given a margin to pull away, but he's got 7 seconds to catch Buddha, and no penalty advantage to his name anymore. Only Pager and James yet to pick up track limits. So on the first lap of Ivy, out in front, unable to break the DRS onto Baxter at the moment, which is going to keep them in play. But Demo picking up another 3-second penalty is going to make it a lot harder for us to track the relative finishing positions after penalties, as Baxter does send it down the inside, but Ivy's going to have the grip to sail on back past with the outside line. Gets the grip as Slav and Kayhan both going down the inside of each other, which is bringing Buddha back into the play, but Slav has to sit on back behind Kayhan at the moment, all with penalties, even out the game a little bit, as Demo trying to make something work onto James, but James also trying to respond with a definitive no, stamping his ground and keeping P number 9 here on lap number 8. Ivy onto the main straight. It's going to dip into the inside line early, defend any kind of inside dives, but it will give him a worse exit onto these S's, which is going to give Bex a huge potential run, but it's going to be a lot of dirty air once you get that close to the car behind. So can he hang on through the first, second, third part of the S's as we go around this huge right-hander, but just keeps on going until he's flicked back left and the pressure on the car completely shifts. And on the higher fuel loads, it takes a lot of effort to get the car to turn on through there, but fuel loads starting to lower out off just a little bit in this race, and Ivy pulls a huge gap while Baxter's tyres overheated in that dirty air. Fade also still stuck on the back of Pager, has the pace to try and make something here, but not enough to make it work in this DRS. Ivy already moving over to the left-hand side of the straight, back over to the right, while having no contention from Baxter, is allowed to do so, so it's going to have to try and defend yet again, as we see James gets overtaken, but then gets it back again, switching and swapping. Then he has DRS, which is going to deny Demo from trying to make this overtake back onto him. This time around, Demo does lock up as well. Buddha was able to make the move on the inside of Krislav while was paying attention to Demo, getting re-overtaken by James again, which is making his race fall back down to P number 7, as Buddha, from starting at the back, is now up to P number 6. As we round the track again, Ivy not able to break the DRS, but does pull out 9/10 of a gap at the moment. It's going to be a decent opportunity to break that slipstream. Baxter doesn't move over to the left as well, so it's going to be purely DRS dragging him down this straight, which might give Ivy finally some kind of track position to pull in this final sector. If he has the lap time in him, he might finally break DRS, as a better exit already puts him on that 1 second margin, as Kayhan and Buddha now fighting for position as well. Buddha on the outside gets a decent exit, now sends it down the inside line, does make the move stick onto Cayenne after making a switchback work and defends heavily that inside line and gets punted off of the track by Cayenne. He's going to have to either give that back or get potentially investigated, as that was a clear punt and advantage gain from that contact, as Ivy is able to break the DRS on Baxter, critically for his racing opportunities against Pager and buying that 3-second gap. He is finally clear, but can Baxter respond in sector number 1 through the S's, or will Ivy now have a chance to finally pull away? Rounding through the S's, currently with the advantage, but the margin is hovering. Pager also now struggling with his tyres, falling out of the DRS of his own teammate, so it might be better for Baxter to give up this P number 1 and try and secure Pager with this P number 3 by giving him some slipstream, which, with the gap growing by a couple attempts in that last braking zone, not able to get Baxter back into that DRS, but it's Pager who desperately needs that DRS now, as Fade is still on his backside, and he does keep that DRS at the moment onto his own teammate and keeps himself into play in this P number 3. As further back, Butter with the DRS wide open, but nowhere near a good enough exit this time around to try and make an overtake onto Cayenne, who's going to keep himself clean, while Chris Lab does catch up to these two. We've been battling quite hastily these last few laps. Ivy now storming kind of ahead, 1.6 seconds by the end of the lap, and with that clear air, he's going to be able to cool down his tyres and try and conserve them to the end, as we still have 7 laps remaining. But Baxter still in front of his teammate, on track, but will fall behind as long as Pager keeps himself clean, and he still has a chance with Ivy, so long as Ivy doesn't pull 3 more seconds. But Pager definitely also has to look behind, as Fade is pressuring him. Fade needs to get past Pager and pull 3 seconds, which at this rate is not looking very easy, especially with how hard Ivy found getting past Baxter, and Baxter didn't have any slipstream or DRS at that point. And Pager is just going to be kept into Baxter's DRS again, which is going to make the lap even harder for Fade, as his tyre wears and being stuck in this dirty air is going to start making his race a hell of a lot more difficult. 2.2 seconds is already the growing margin for Ivy, who has clearly got the pace to pull that 3 seconds at the moment. He will have to manage his tyres to the end, so he might lose a bit of that pace. But Butter falling and making contact with Cayenne, both going wide off circuit, letting Chris Lavendale back on through, as Dale is only 1.5 seconds behind Chris Lav now. And we saw that he does have the pace, and now an opportunity to try and battle for P number 5, which has been kind of gifted through that contact between Cayenne and Buddha. So we look to the back of the grid, James 6 seconds back at P number 9, Demo P10 with 15-second gap, and Geordie with 35 seconds. But critically, for the state of this race, Ivy doesn't need that 3-second gap anymore. Pager has picked up his own 3-second track limit penalty. As long as no one else picks up another, the top 3 positions, the top 4 positions, mind you, will all be down to track position unless any of them end up picking up any extra penalties. But with how it's gone, and with the race settling down, that's not going to be the case. The only issue is Fade having that extra 3 seconds to his name now. So top 3 on track finishing positions, unless Fade is able to make something work, but has been stuck in this DRS train. And the team again from Williams, they tried to make it work, but it got neutralized by a safety car, and Ivy's pace today was just too great so far, and has been able to sling into P number 1. But the team games are still going to be a constructor's benefit at the moment, and it's going to have to be another solid 5 laps to defend off Fade. As a 13-second gap is the Krislav behind. And so this top 4 is safe in position. But can Dale make anything work as Cayenne and Buddha both pit for damage, which promotes James and Demo further forward and promotes this as the definitive 5th place battle on track. Dale already on the back of the back wing with DRS wide open, making Slav go defensive already. He's going to take the wider outside line, going to swing on through, get as close as he can before entering the S's, and going to give himself as good of an opportunity as he can potentially look for. With a huge gap on track, we switch our eyes back to see if Fade can try and make anything work. And the gap to Ivy has dropped as a potential focus on tyre saving and management for the rest of the race is now come to his mind as he doesn't have to push for that 3-second margin. But a 4/10 gap this time, and in previous games you would have known for sure that closer gaps would have been better in the slipstream. But in this game, no matter how close Fade gets, as long as he's in slipstream with DRS, the conditions are neutral besides the ERS management, as Buddha picks up a 3-second penalty again. No one's going to finish this race without a penalty then today, as Krislav is defending his position. But will it be like we saw earlier, where Dale on the inside can make something work as it's going to switch to the outside? No, but the inside dive is quite clean. A little bit of contact, but no damage, and Dale up to P number 5. But with a haunting 15 seconds gap ahead of him, as we do see Geordie end up getting disqualified for picking up too many penalties. Gone to the final 4 laps as we start lap 25. Slav tries to send it down the inside, but isn't able to make it alongside. So Dale now has the chance to pull through Sector 1, that gap that he needs. As the attention swings back again to the top 4 positions. Ivy solidly out in front. But Fade with a huge run this time. And as so long as he has that ERS, he's going to be able to deploy. But clearly, Pedro had more left in the tank and pulls back that gap and is able to defend once again from Fade. Cayenne and Demo racing each other on track, and Cayenne is through, but with not the cleanest of overtakes, as Buddha is going to be catching the back of Demo rapidly as well. Demo not been the DRS of Buddha, so we'll be fine for this main straight, but we'll still see that Red Bull lingering in the background as we swing through into sector number 3. Demo has been struggling in the corners, and this is where Buddha can gain a lot of time. Shaves off 2 tenths so far in this sector. Is right on to the slipstream range now, but it's still going to be a bit of a difficult overtake with a 7/10 margin onto this main straight as Fade picks up another 3-second penalty to his name, almost solidifying the top 3 now. You will want to do something on track just to prove the point, but even if he finds it now, the 2 Williams have kept it clean and will keep P number 2 and 3 so long as nothing else happens. Buddha is right on the back of Demo here now. Going through the S's here at COTA. This is the 3rd to final round as well in the championship. Here at the PRL. And with a huge exit, he's already going to have a chance to overtake Demo. It's going to force him off the track though to do it. But does make the position on the inside. But Demo will pick up that DRS due to that early overtake. Contact with the rear right wheel. He's going to hope that that doesn't pick up damage for Demo, nor pick up a puncture for Butter. But with the DRS open, slipstreaming down the straight, pulls out alongside, round the right side. Gonna brake as late as he can, but it's gonna keep the inside line tire contact again. A little bit more, and a bit argy-bargy, but inside line still for Demo as he swings through and keeps position ahead of Butter. But now back on the inside line as the track curves back in favour to those who was on the left. And Butter back into P number 9 again. Dale picking up an extra 3-second penalty, but does have a 3-second margin over Slav. So as long as he only has 3 extra seconds, he will still finish in P number 5. Demo still got that DRS, but gets a poor exit, which might falter his opportunity to make a move, but does try and send deep braking on the outside line. Gonna switch back, and good on the exit, but not enough grip to try and make anything worse. And once we get to the S's, it all closes off. Ivy is able to pull a 3-second gap over that of Bexter, who has been doing a wonderful team game. And once we get through this third and final sector of the circuit, he will have one more lap to complete alongside Pager for the championship. It might be better to switch for the Drivers' Championship, but in terms of constructors, this is a phenomenal position at the moment. They just gotta go for one more lap. As we go through the S's, we will watch on board as Pager is right on the back. He might want to try and make something here. He hasn't gone aggressive on his teammate this entire stint after pitting, but this time he's that little bit closer. But he does lose a bit of time to fade in the back end of sector number 2 onto the starter sector number 2. But he is close, and he might be close enough to try and make something work. He's going to have the DRS, but he's going to be careful of fade behind. He's going to open it on up. He's going to come to the DRS point. He's going to open it on up, and with so, he's going to use that slipstream, and we will find out going into this braking zone if Pager will play the team game or will want to try and get that position. As he makes contact on the inside, he picks up a 3-second penalty as well. But luckily, he knows Fade has one behind, so this is still going to be for position on track, and he was still fine for Fade. But after picking up that 3 seconds from that multiple warnings penalty, he may as well let Bexter go to the line, as it's no risk anymore. But Ivy, rounding that final corner here at Texas, your race winner in the Ferrari, followed by the 2 Williams playing a massive team game here today. Coming across the line, P number 2 and P number 3. Fade dropping another 3 seconds back with that 9 seconds of penalties. Well, we wait for the Sauber of Fade to come across, claim his P number 5. And Slav kept his nose cleaner than most for P number 6. And then it's James rounding the corners for one final time. Difficult race for him, but didn't get involved in collision, so it's P number 7. Cayenne and Butter close up on these final laps, but will be Cayenne on track, but with more penalties. Butter, and to round it out, Demo in P number 10. Well, that's it for the race at COTA, as we see on the podium, your winner, Ivy here today, doing Ferrari proud and the Tifosi happy. But it's Williams who gain in the constructors standings again by having 2 drivers and 2 drivers on the podium. Pager and Bexter played in a phenomenal team game, but Pager tried to make a move stick, but ended up forcing him to be final with P number 3, as Fade desperately denied any chances by the Team Games. And clearly, your driver of the day by a phenomenal margin, with most overtakes, cleanest race, and the race win. Ivy will be proud of their result here in the PRL. That will be the end of this one. We will see you again for Las Vegas before we get to Brazil for the final round. This has been the PRL. We'll see you.